All right, people, I'm back. I said back-to-back videos. Now, this one's an NFL football video. Today's episode is going to be the Atlanta Falcons versus the Carolina Panthers. Cam Newton versus the Atlanta Falcons quarterback. Now, in this video, we're going to be talking about these two football teams, these two future NFL football teams, and why these two teams went to the Super Bowl and why they choked in the Super Bowl. Because you know it has to be made into a video. You know I got to talk about it. It wouldn't make sense if I didn't talk about it, so I have to. So let's get with the Atlanta Falcons. Now, for about 16 or 17 years in the NFL, this football team has struggled, and I mean struggled, to try to get themselves to the Super Bowl. Since the days of Michael Vick playing for the Atlanta Falcons, they would win football games, they would make playoffs, they would win a playoff game, and then they would lose a playoff game, and that would go on for about 7 years. And then what killed their chances of ever making it to the Super Bowl is when Michael Vick decided I want to do dog fighting and kind of slandered and ruined the reputation of the Atlanta Falcons for quite a while. And then, of course, we all know he ended up being traded to the Philadelphia Eagles because they just couldn't stand the fact their reputation was ruined by this tragedy of animal fighting, as people love to call it. I mean, he was a good football player. He was the reason why they won 70 to 80% of their football games. But even before we had Michael Vick, we go back into the 90s, they had some good players like that. A lot of y'all don't remember, but before Bill Goldberg was a professional wrestler, he had one time played professional football with the Atlanta Falcons and had a long history with that football team. But for like 17 or 18 years, this football team struggled to win football games, to make it to the playoffs, and finally, after almost 2 decades of having a hard time of making it into the Super Bowl, they finally get there. And who do they end up facing in the Super Bowl? The New England Patriots. You know, the football team that everybody hates. Oh, they deflated the football. They cheated. You know, this football team, I can't stand the Patriots. I hate Brady and all this other crap. And for the first half, they dominated the New England Patriots. I mean, the first quarter and the second quarter, Tom Brady couldn't throw the football. They kept doing interceptions. They kept picking the football off. They ran the hell out of their defense. They had the offense on shutdown for 2 quarters. You know, had this huge ass 20, 30 point lead. And it seemed like that the Atlanta Falcons would do something that has never been done before in their franchise history. That's win their first championship in 2 decades. Unfortunately, when the third quarter began, a field goal was made. Then a second field goal. Then a third field goal. Then a touchdown. Then another touchdown. And then another touchdown. Then a field goal. And a touchdown. And before we know it, little by little by little, the lead began to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And before we know it, by the time we got to the fourth quarter, it was a tied football game. And then closer to the end of the fourth quarter, we see the New England Patriots take the lead and then blow their ass out. And you see, this is something that people have been asking. How in the hell the Atlanta Falcons make it to the Super Bowl? You have the game in the palm of your hands. All you have to do is win 2 more quarters and you win a Super Bowl. And you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of when I was in high school and in college. There's this super hot, attractive ass woman, and I'm doing good in the very beginning. You know, I'm getting conversation, we're laughing, we're cracking jokes, we're pulling pranks on each other. And then all of a sudden, when it's time to close the deal, when it's time to put a seal of approval on the deal, when it's time to close out and cash out and hit that ass, All of a sudden, the golden opportunity, just like that, slips out of your hands, and someone else cashes in on that opportunity, and they hit that ass, and you're left scratching your head, looking up at the sky, wondering what the hell did just happen. I pulled out all the right moves, I said all the right stuff, and I couldn't pull the trigger. And that's what happened to the Atlanta Falcons. They tried to pull the trigger 7 times in the football game, and right when they needed it most, they couldn't stop the Patriots in the second half of the game. Even if the game had gone into overtime, if had it done, Patriots would have still won, because at that point, they got their confidence, they regained their composure. Tom Brady said, okay, these guys are too happy, they're too excited, they're just happy to come to a Super Bowl. We've been here before, let's act like we know what we're going to do. And they won the Super Bowl. And the Atlanta Falcons were heartbroken. Like, what in the hell happened? Tom Brady did terrible the first and second quarters. He does great in the third and the fourth quarters. And we lose the game and the championship. And to see the look on their face, it's like, what? What the hell happened? And you see the quarterback played a near perfect game. And I'm talking about the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons. He played a perfect game. He did a good job. Problem was, when it came to trying to win the football game, you could kind of see the writings on the wall. Once a team comes back from being 20 or 30 points down and they start chipping away at the score, it's like there's a guy telling you at the nightclub, if you don't holler at the most finest ass chick in 30 minutes, I'm going to holler at that ass and I'm going to take that ass off your hands. It's like Tom Brady came in and said, guess what? I'm taking the championship off your hands, guys. And that's what happened to the Atlanta Falcons. Tom Brady came in there and said, you know what? I'm taking the championship off your hands. And from that point on, the Atlanta Falcons were never the same football team ever since. They never got over the loss. They never got over the fact that they had the Super Bowl won. All they had to do was win 2 more damn quarters, and the Super Bowl was theirs. And they choked. And people call this the football team that choked. Like, how do you get this far in a Super Bowl and you squander this opportunity away that fast? Now, some people might say maybe they just got in the moment where they just didn't think the Patriots was going to come back. And we know the Patriots always make a comeback in these football games. So that's how they failed. And this organization has had to deal with the fact that for the last 2 or 3 seasons, they ain't never been quite able to get back on track ever since that loss. It's like ever since they lost, they don't know who they are. They don't know if they're the football team that got to the Super Bowl. They don't know if they're the football team that was on their way to the Super Bowl. It's like they're struggling with their identity. It's like someone came in and just robbed them of their dignity, and now they can't seem to function without knowing, who am I? While on the other hand, we have another football team who managed to make it to the Super Bowl 2 4 or 5 years ago, and they have not been the same football team since. And that's the Carolina Panthers. Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers. So, you got a lot of people that hate this football team. Got a lot of haters. And I mean, a lot of haters hate this football team. I mean, for you to win all your football games in the preseason and the actual season, and then to come in here and you just freeze up in the Super Bowl against the new look Denver Broncos, makes you kind of scratch your head and say it's the same thing we saw with the New England Patriots when they was against the New York Giants in 2007 when they had the perfect record in the Super Bowl. And that's what Cam Newton had. He had the perfect record in the Super Bowl, trying to do something that ain't never been done before, and he just couldn't get nothing going in the Super Bowl. I mean, I was so angry and so enraged. I had bought me a Cam Newton shirt. I was a Carolina Panther fan. I was a Cam Newton fan. I was hoping that a black quarterback would finally do the impossible, and I was disappointed. Like most fans, disappointed. And the offense was so powerful. I mean, that Denver Bronco put him in a straitjacket and locked him up and threw away the keys. And I'm like, and then when we get to the second half of the football game, they put some points up. They scored. But the critics were saying it ain't the football team that choked in the Super Bowl. Talking about the Panthers. It's actually Cam Newton himself that choked in the Super Bowl. I mean, the pressure must have gotten to him so bad to the point where he just forgot we're in the Super Bowl and this is where we put it all on the line. It's like what Mike Tyson said in boxing. It's all or nothing. It's either you go in hard or you don't go in at all. And I don't know if he froze up because he wasn't used to the pressure, the news media, the haters, the death threats. I don't know what made Cam Newton just not respond very well in the Super Bowl. It's like coming to work, doing security, and you know there's a crisis that picks up, and you fail to respond not once, not twice, but you fail to respond several to 8 times. And then there were fumbles, lost footballs, being sacked, being dropped on the floor, can't seem to get up to the middle, can't even throw the ball, can't even get in position to throw the ball. It was like seeing him struggle for the first time and people saying, I told you this guy was a rookie. I told you this guy only can do this in the season, and when you need him to do it in the Super Bowl, you can't find this guy. It's like going to high school and everyone comes to class on time, except for the A student. You know, he in the bathroom, hitting that weed or hitting that blunt or whatever, drinking alcohol, or, he trying to get him some summer midnight love. And they go into the bathroom, they find him in the bathroom sitting there, and they have to grab him by his neck and make him go to class because he was missing from the roll call. And it seemed that's what happened with Cam Newton. He was missing from the roll call. And to this day, the Carolina Panthers football team, they have never, and I mean never, 100% actually recovered from that loss. He ain't been the same football player since. His confidence is up and down. You don't see him calling himself Superman as much. And the question that people ask is, which one of these football teams in the next 5 years is going to try to rebound back and go back to the Super Bowl? I'm pretty sure that he would try to bounce back. For Cam Newton, give him until he's around 30. I think with Cam Newton, he needs to grow up and mature. A guy who falls in love with a girl that's buck wild, and everyone tells him, I know you like this girl, I know you love this girl, I know you want to be with this girl, but you're too young, you're too immature, and it just ain't going to work between you two. Maybe when you mature in 10 years and another girl comes around, you might be ready for that challenge. And I think that's what it is for Cam Newton. Maybe he might need to grow up a little bit more maturity in the media, and maybe by the time he's 30, the guy wins a Super Bowl. Now, I don't think he'll win 2 or 3 or 4 championships, but I do think when Cam Newton's career is over, he might get maybe 1 or 2 Super Bowls. For him, it just might require some more maturity and some more growth. I mean, that's probably what it is for him. Now, for the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, it's probably the frustration. The fact that we got here, we put in the work, we grinded out for 2 quarters, and when it was time to play the third quarter, and when it was time to do the fourth quarter, we just couldn't pull the trigger. We tried to pull the trigger 7 to 8 times, and it just didn't work. It's like having a gun, and there's no bullets in the gun, and you're looking at the bad guy, and you're like, oh shit, and the bad guy kills you, and the movie's over. That's pretty much what it was for the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I do believe the Atlanta Falcons have learned their lesson that when you get to a Super Bowl, you've got to cash in. You got to sign on a delivery on the dotted line. You got to close that deal and hit that ass if you're going to get the girl. So I think in their case, the Atlanta Falcons is like, if we ever get back to the Super Bowl, if we ever get back to this position, we are going to not make the same mistake twice. And I think the Atlanta Falcons have learned from the example of the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles had that problem too. Remember back when the Philadelphia Eagles made it to the Super Bowl 10 years ago and they had the same problem? They won the first 2 quarters and then all of a sudden they lost the Super Bowl to a team like the Patriots. And then when they got back to the Super Bowl, you saw they did not make no mistakes whatsoever. And I think teams like the Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers should learn from the prime example of the Eagles. That this was a football team just like these two that made it to a Super Bowl, did good for 2 quarters, and then you couldn't find them in the 3rd or in the 4th quarter, and everything went to shit. So I think these two teams have learned from that example, and that in 10 years, Cam Newton will win a Super Bowl. It's just going to take some more growth and maturity for him. And for the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, it's a question of the next time I get back to the Super Bowl, I'm going to execute. Guess what? I'm going to execute. So that's the comparison between these two football teams. And I said I was going to come back with some more NFL videos. So probably in the next one, we'll talk about exactly that. The Eagles, can they actually win another Super Bowl or not? What about the Rams? So we'll probably do the Eagles and the Rams. And then I'll probably hit you guys up with a video called, if you don't want to wait 5 or 10 or 15, 20 years to get the females that you want, what type of shortcuts are to getting these females? So I hope you love and enjoy this NFL video. Peace.